Imagine you're on a crowded city bus, the kind where every seat is taken and the air's thick with the hum of strangers going about their day. It's one of those moments where life feels ordinary, routine, like nothing special could possibly happen. But then something does. Something small, something kind, something that changes everything. Hey, what's good, everyone? Welcome back to the channel, where we dive into stories that remind us how one moment can spark something incredible. Today, we've got a story that's going to hit you right in the feels. It's about a black teen, just trying to get through his day, who makes a simple choice that leads to a note that turns his world upside down. Stick around, because you're not going to believe what happens next. Picture this. It's a hot summer afternoon in Chicago, the kind of day where the sun's beating down and the bus is packed tighter than a can of sardines. Jaden, a 17-year-old kid with a backpack slung over one shoulder, is just trying to get home from his part-time job at the corner store. He's got his earbuds in, vibing to some music, but he's not really paying attention to the world around him. Jaden's your typical teen, dreams big, works hard, but life hasn't exactly handed him a silver spoon. Growing up in a neighborhood where opportunities are scarce, he's learned to keep his head down and stay out of trouble. But today, something's different. As the bus lurches to a stop, a pregnant woman steps on, her face tired, her hands cradling her belly like it's the most precious thing in the world. She's white, maybe in her 30s, and you can tell she's struggling to keep her balance as the bus starts moving again. Every seat's taken and nobody's budging. Nobody, that is, except Jaden. Now, Jaden's no saint. He's tired too, his feet aching from standing all day. But something in him just clicks. Maybe it's the way she's holding herself, or maybe it's just the right thing to do. He stands up, flashes a shy smile, and offers her his seat. The woman's eyes light up with gratitude, and she sits down, murmuring a soft thank you. Jaden thinks that's the end of it, just another day, another small act of kindness. But as she gets up to leave a few stops later, she slips something into his hand. It's a folded piece of paper, worn at the edges, like it's been carried around for a while. She doesn't say much, just looks at him with this intense, almost mysterious expression, and then she's gone, disappearing into the crowd. Jaden unfolds the note, his heart pounding, and what he reads makes his breath catch in his throat. It's not just a thank you. It's something bigger, something that could change his life forever. What's in that note? Why did she give it to him? And what's going to happen to Jaden now? You're going to have to stick around for the full story because, trust me, this one's got twists you won't see coming. Hit that like button, subscribe, and let's dive into this wild ride together. Jaden stood frozen on the bus, the folded note clutched in his hand like it was a live wire. The hum of the engine and the chatter of passengers faded into a dull buzz as he stared down at the creased paper. His heart was still racing from the moment the woman had slipped it to him, her eyes locking onto his with that strange, knowing look. What was that about? He glanced around, half expecting someone to be watching, but the other passengers were lost in their own worlds, scrolling on phones, staring out windows, or nodding off. The bus jolted over a pothole, snapping him back to reality. He shoved the note into his pocket, his fingers brushing against the worn fabric of his jeans. Whatever was written on that paper, he wasn't ready to read it. Not here, not now. But the weight of it seemed to burn a hole in his pocket as he made his way to the back of the bus, squeezing past a guy with a massive backpack. Jaden's mind was spinning as he found a spot to stand, gripping the overhead rail. Who was that woman? She didn't seem like just another stranger on the bus. There was something about her, maybe the way she carried herself, or the way her eyes seemed to see right through him. He replayed the moment in his head, her stepping onto the bus, her tired smile when he offered his seat, the quick, almost secretive way she'd handed him the note. He'd done stuff like that before, given up his seat, held a door open, helped someone with their groceries. It was just how his mom raised him. You don't got much, Jay, but you got kindness, she'd always say. But this felt different. Like he'd just stepped into something bigger than he could wrap his head around. He leaned his head against the cool metal of the bus pole, trying to piece it together. Jaden wasn't the type to overthink things. At 17, life was pretty straightforward. Go to school, work his shifts at the corner store, help his mom with bills when he could. Growing up in Englewood, one of Chicago's rougher neighborhoods, he'd learned to keep things simple. Dreams were nice, but they didn't pay the rent. His mom, Letitia, worked 2 jobs, nurse by day, cleaner by night, and still barely made ends meet. Jaden had seen her cry over bills more times than he wanted to admit. He'd promised himself he'd find a way to make things easier for her, even if it meant putting his own plans on hold. College? Maybe someday. For now, it was about survival. The bus screeched to a stop, and Jaden glanced out the window. His stop was coming up, but he couldn't shake the feeling that the note in his pocket was more than just a piece of paper. What if it was a scam? He'd heard stories, people slipping you fake checks or weird offers that sounded too good to be true. But the woman didn't seem like a con artist. She looked grateful, almost desperate, like she needed him to take that note. He patted his pocket again, making sure it was still there. Part of him wanted to rip it open right then and there, but another part, the cautious part that had kept him out of trouble in a neighborhood where trouble was always lurking, told him to wait. He needed to be somewhere safe, somewhere private, before he unfolded whatever mystery was waiting for him. As the bus pulled up to a stop, Jaden stepped off into the familiar chaos of his neighborhood. The street was alive with the usual sounds, kids laughing as they played basketball on a cracked court, music blaring from a passing car, someone shouting from a porch. He adjusted his backpack and started the short walk to his apartment, a second-floor walk-up in a building that had seen better days. The paint was peeling, the stairs creaked, and the hallway always smelled faintly of fried food, but it was home. His mom wouldn't be back for hours. She was pulling a double shift tonight, so he'd have the place to himself. Perfect time to figure out what this note was all about. Inside the apartment, Jaden dropped his backpack by the door and kicked off his sneakers. The living room was small but cozy, with a worn couch, a coffee table covered in old magazines, and a framed photo of him and his mom from his middle school graduation. He smiled at the memory. His mom had been so proud, snapping a million pictures like he was headed to the White House instead of high school. He grabbed a glass of water from the kitchen and sat down on the couch, the note still burning a hole in his pocket. His phone buzzed with a text from his best friend, Marcus. "Yo, you working tomorrow? Wanna hit the court?" Jaden typed a quick reply, maybe, got some stuff to figure out, and set the phone down. Marcus was the only person he'd tell about this, but not yet. Not until he knew what he was dealing with. He pulled the note out, holding it up to the light. The paper was plain, a little yellowed, like it had been folded and unfolded 100 times. His fingers hesitated at the edge. What if it was nothing? Just a thank you note or some random scribble. But what if it wasn't? His stomach twisted with a mix of excitement and nerves. He'd always dreamed of something big happening, something that could change his life, get him and his mom out of this apartment, out of this grind. But those kinds of things didn't happen to kids like him. Or did they? Jaden took a deep breath and unfolded the note. The handwriting was neat but hurried, like the person who wrote it was in a rush. The words hit him like a punch to the chest. "You're the one I've been looking for. Meet me at the corner of 63rd and Halsted tomorrow at 6 p.m. Don't tell anyone. Your future depends on it." Below the message was a signature, just a single initial, E. His hands shook as he read it again. The one she'd been looking for? What did that even mean? And why the secrecy? His mind raced with possibilities. Was this some kind of opportunity? A job? A scholarship? Or was it something else entirely, something dangerous? He leaned back on the couch, the note still in his hands. The woman's face flashed in his mind, her tired eyes, her quiet gratitude, that strange intensity when she handed him the note. He didn't even know her name, but she'd known his. How? He hadn't told her anything. The more he thought about it, the weirder it got. Had she been watching him? Following him? The idea sent a chill down his spine. He glanced around the empty apartment, suddenly hyper-aware of every creak and hum. The clock on the wall ticked louder than usual. It was just past 5 p.m. tomorrow. At 6 p.m. was a little over 24 hours away. He had a choice to make: show up and find out what this was about, or toss the note and pretend it never happened. But Jaden wasn't the type to back away from a mystery. Growing up, he'd always been the kid who asked questions, who wanted to know how things worked, why things were the way they were. His mom used to joke that he'd be a detective someday, always sniffing out the truth. Maybe this was his chance to prove her right. Or maybe it was a mistake that could pull him into something he wasn't ready for. He folded the note and tucked it back into his pocket, his mind buzzing with questions. Pat, the old woman who lived downstairs, always said, "Curiosity is a gift and a curse, Jaden." He was starting to understand what she meant. He got up and paced the living room, trying to shake the uneasy feeling in his gut. The note had said not to tell anyone, but he couldn't help himself. He grabbed his phone and called Marcus. "Yo, man, you got a minute?" he asked when Marcus picked up. "Something weird just happened." Marcus's voice crackled through the speaker, all energy. "What's good? You in trouble, or what?" Jaden hesitated, the note's warning echoing in his head. "Nah, not trouble. Just something. I'll tell you later." "You free tomorrow?" Marcus laughed. "Tomorrow's cool, but you can't leave me hanging like that."
Spill.
Jaden smiled despite himself. "Later, man. I promise." He hung up, his heart still pounding. As the sun set outside, casting long shadows across the room, Jaden sat back down and stared at the note again. The words seemed to burn into him. "Your future depends on it." What could that mean? A scholarship? A job? Something bigger? Or something bad? He thought about his mom, working herself to the bone, always telling him to keep his head up, to believe in something better. Maybe this was it. Or maybe it was a trap. The clock kept ticking, each second pulling him closer to the moment he'd have to decide. Should he go to 63rd and Halstead tomorrow? Or should he walk away from the mystery and never look back? One thing was for sure, his life was about to change, and he wasn't sure if he was ready for it. Jaden barely slept that night. The note sat on his nightstand, its edges curling slightly under the dim glow of his phone screen. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the woman's face, those tired, searching eyes that seemed to know something he didn't. He tossed and turned, the words "your future depends on it" looping in his mind like a song he couldn't shake. By the time the first light of dawn crept through his window, he was already up, pacing the small bedroom. The clock read 5:47 a.m., less than 12 hours until the meeting at 63rd and Halstead. His stomach churned with a mix of excitement and dread. He wanted to believe this could be something good, a chance to break free from the grind, to make his mom proud. But the secrecy, the vagueness of it all, gnawed at him. What if he was walking into trouble? He grabbed his phone and scrolled through his texts, tempted to tell Marcus everything, but the note's warning, "Don't tell anyone," stopped him cold. Downstairs, the smell of coffee and bacon drifted up from Pat's apartment. The old woman had been like a grandmother to Jaden since he was a kid, always slipping him extra cookies or telling him stories about her days growing up in Mississippi. She had a way of seeing through people, like she could spot a lie from a mile away. Maybe she'd have some advice about this. Jaden pulled on a hoodie and headed downstairs, the note tucked safely in his pocket. Pat was at her kitchen table, her gray hair pulled back in a tight bun, sipping coffee from a chipped mug. "Morning, Jay," she said, her voice warm but sharp. "You look like you've seen a ghost. What's got you up so early?" Jaden hesitated, his fingers brushing the note. He wanted to tell her, but something held him back. Instead, he shrugged. "Just couldn't sleep. Thinking about stuff." Pat raised an eyebrow, her eyes narrowing like she knew he was holding something back. "Stuff, huh? You know you can't fool me, boy. But I'll let you keep your secrets for now." She slid a plate of bacon across the table.
Eat.
"You look like you need it." Jaden forced a smile and took a piece, but his mind was elsewhere. He couldn't shake the image of the woman on the bus.
Who was she?
Why him? He thought about the way she'd looked at him, like she'd been waiting for him specifically. It didn't make sense. He was just a kid from Englewood, not some chosen one from a movie. But the note said otherwise. "You're the one I've been looking for." Those words felt heavy, like they carried a weight he couldn't fully grasp. As he chewed, he glanced at Pat, who was watching him with that knowing look. "You ever get a gut feeling about something, Patsa?" he asked. She leaned back in her chair, her eyes softening. All the time, Jay. Sometimes it's a warning. Sometimes it's a door opening. Trick is knowing which one. He nodded, but her words only made the knot in his stomach tighter. Back upstairs, Jaden's mom, Letitia, was getting ready for her morning shift at the hospital. She moved through the apartment like a whirlwind, grabbing her keys and muttering about a late bill. "You okay, baby?" she asked, pausing to look at him. Her face was tired, but her eyes were full of love. Jaden wanted to tell her about the note, about the meeting, but he couldn't bring himself to do it. She had enough on her plate. "Yeah, Ma, I'm good," he lied, forcing a grin. She ruffled his hair like he was still a kid. "You better be. I'm counting on you to keep things together around here." As she left, Jaden felt a pang of guilt. He hated keeping secrets from her, but the note's warning echoed in his head. He couldn't risk it, not yet. The day dragged on. Jaden tried to distract himself with schoolwork, but his mind kept wandering back to the note. He pulled it out again, rereading the words until they were burned into his brain. "Meet me at the corner of 63rd and Halsted tomorrow at 6 p.m. That intersection wasn't far, just a few blocks away, but it wasn't exactly the safest spot. It was a busy corner, sure, with shops and people always coming and going, but it was also known for trouble. Fights, shady deals, the kind of stuff Jaden had always steered clear of. He wondered if the woman knew that. Was she testing him? Or was she in some kind of trouble herself? The signature, E, was another puzzle.
Who was E?
A name?
An initial?
Someone important? His imagination ran wild, picturing everything from a rich philanthropist to a con artist setting him up. By afternoon, Jaden couldn't sit still anymore. He grabbed his basketball and headed to the court down the street, hoping some hoops would clear his head. Marcus was already there, dribbling like he was auditioning for the NBA. "Yo, what's up with you?" Marcus called out, tossing him the ball. "You look like you're carrying the weight of the world." Jaden caught the ball but didn't answer right away. He took a shot, missing the rim by a mile. Marcus laughed. "Man, you're off today. What's the deal? You said something weird happened yesterday." Jaden hesitated, the note's warning ringing in his ears. But Marcus was his best friend, the one person he trusted with anything. "Okay, look," he said, lowering his voice. "Something happened on the bus yesterday. This lady, she gave me a note. Said some stuff about my future. Told me to meet her tonight." Marcus's eyes widened. "For real? What kind of note? Like a love letter or something?" Jaden snorted. "Nah, man, nothing like that. It's weird. She said I'm the one she's been looking for." Marcus stopped dribbling, his face serious. "Bruh, that sounds sketchy. You sure it's not some kind of scam? People be out here wildin'." Jaden shrugged, but Marcus's words hit home. He'd been thinking the same thing. What if this was a setup? He'd heard about people getting lured into bad situations, fake job offers, sketchy deals that ended with someone getting hurt. But the woman didn't seem like that. There was something real about her, something almost sad. He shook his head, trying to focus on the game, but his shots kept clanging off the rim. Marcus wasn't letting it go. "You going to this meeting or what? 'Cause if you are, I'm coming with you. Ain't no way I'm letting you walk into some shady stuff alone." Jaden wanted to argue, but the idea of having Marcus there made him feel a little less alone. Still, the note said don't tell anyone. Could he risk it? What if Marcus being there messed everything up? As the sun dipped lower, Jaden's nerves kicked into overdrive. He left the court and walked the neighborhood, trying to burn off the anxious energy. Everywhere he looked, he saw reminders of the life he wanted to escape. The boarded-up storefronts, the groups of guys hanging out on corners, the tired faces of people just trying to get by. He thought about his mom, working herself to exhaustion, and the promise he'd made to help her. What if this meeting was his shot? What if it was a way out, not just for him but for both of them? But the doubts kept creeping in. What if it was a mistake? What if E wasn't who she seemed? He passed a small church on the corner, its sign reading, "Trust in the path laid before you." He wasn't big on religion, but the word stuck with him. Was this his path? Or was he about to step off a cliff? Back at home, Jaden sat on the couch, the note in his hands again. The clock was ticking closer to 6 p.m. He imagined showing up at the corner, the woman waiting there with answers. Or maybe no one at all.
What if she didn't show?
What if this was all some kind of prank? He thought about Pat's words about gut feelings and doors opening. His gut was screaming at him, but he couldn't tell if it was telling him to go or to stay away. He grabbed his jacket, his heart pounding like a drum. Whatever was waiting at 63rd and Halstead, he was about to find out. But as he stepped toward the door, his phone buzzed with a new text from an unknown number. Be careful tonight. Not everyone is who they seem. Jaden froze, his blood running cold.
Who sent that?
And how did they know where he was going? Jaden stared at the text on his phone, his heart hammering so hard he could feel it in his throat. Be careful tonight. Not everyone is who they seem. The words burned into his brain, each one tightening the knot in his stomach.
Who sent this?
How did they know about the meeting? He checked the number again, unknown, no name, no clue. His first instinct was to call Marcus, but the note's warning, don't tell anyone, clashed with the new message's vague threat. He felt like he was caught in a game he didn't understand, with rules he didn't know. The clock on the wall read 4:30 p.m. less than 2 hours until he was supposed to be at 63rd and Halstead. He paced the small living room, his sneakers squeaking on the worn floorboards. The note was still in his pocket, its weight heavier than ever. He pulled it out, rereading the hurried handwriting for the 100th time. You're the one I've been looking for. Meet me at the corner of 63rd and Halstead tomorrow at 6 p.m. Don't tell anyone.
Your future depends on it.
The signature, E, stared back at him, mocking his confusion. He wanted answers, but now he wasn't sure if he was walking into a blessing or a trap. He sank onto the couch, his mind racing. The woman on the bus, her tired eyes, her quiet gratitude, kept flashing in his head. She didn't seem dangerous, but that text message changed everything. Was it a warning about her? Or someone else? Jaden thought about his mom, still at work, oblivious to the storm brewing in his life. He imagined her face if something went wrong tonight, her worry, her disappointment. He couldn't let her down, not after everything she'd sacrificed for him. But the note's promise, your future depends on it, dangled in front of him like a lifeline. What if this was his shot at something better? A scholarship, a job, a way to get them out of Englewood? He couldn't ignore it, not when hope was so hard to come by. But that text, it was like a shadow creeping over his optimism, whispering that he was in over his head. Jaden grabbed his phone and texted Marcus, Yo, is still down to meet up later? He didn't mention the note or the new message. He couldn't, not yet, but having Marcus nearby felt like a safety net. Marcus replied almost instantly, Bet. Where we at? Jaden hesitated, his fingers hovering over the screen. The note said not to tell anyone, but Marcus wasn't just anyone. He was the guy who'd had Jaden's back since they were kids, the one who'd pulled him out of a fight in 8th grade, the one who always knew when something was up. Just hang near 63rd and Halstead around 6. I'll explain later, Jaden typed, his stomach twisting. He didn't know if he was breaking the rules or saving himself, but he couldn't do this alone. As the clock ticked closer to 5 p.m., Jaden decided to clear his head with a walk. He threw on his jacket, tucked the note deeper into his pocket, and headed out. The neighborhood was alive with its usual rhythm. Kids running through the streets, music blasting from a car, the faint smell of barbecue drifting from someone's backyard. But today, everything felt different, like the air itself was charged with secrets. He passed the corner store where he worked, waving at his boss, Mr. Carter, who was sweeping the sidewalk. You good, Jay? Mr. Carter called out, his voice gruff but kind. Yeah, I'm good, Jaden lied, forcing a smile. He kept walking, his eyes scanning the faces around him. Was someone watching him? The text had him paranoid, second-guessing every glance, every shadow. He thought about Pat's words from that morning. Sometimes it's a warning. Sometimes it's a door opening. Right now, it felt like both. When he reached the parka block from 63rd and Halstead, Jaden stopped to sit on a bench. The meeting spot was close, and he could already picture it. The busy intersection, the neon signs of the liquor store and the chicken joint, the constant flow of people and cars. It wasn't a place where you could just stand around without being noticed. If this woman, E, was planning something sketchy, why pick such a public spot? And if she wasn't, why all the secrecy? He pulled out his phone again, checking the time. 5:15 p.m. His leg bounced nervously as he scanned the park. A couple of kids were playing on the swings, their laughter cutting through the tension in his chest. He envied them, their world still simple, untouched by mysterious notes and cryptic texts. His phone buzzed again, and his heart skipped a beat. Another text from the unknown number. You're being watched. Trust your instincts. Jaden's breath caught. He whipped his head around, searching the park for anything out of place. A guy in a hoodie was leaning against a tree, scrolling on his phone. A woman was pushing a stroller across the grass. An old man was feeding pigeons on a bench nearby. Nothing seemed off, but the hairs on the back of Jaden's neck stood up. He stood, shoving his phone in his pocket, and started walking towards 63rd and Halstead. He didn't know if he was being paranoid or if the text was real, but he wasn't taking chances. His sneakers hit the pavement hard, each step a mix of determination and fear. He was done waiting. Whatever was going down at 6 p.m., he was ready to face it, or at least he hoped he was. As he approached the intersection, the crowd thickened. People were everywhere, rushing to catch buses, haggling with street vendors, laughing in groups outside the convenience store. Jaden's eyes darted around, searching for the woman from the bus. He didn't even know what he was looking for. Her face was clear in his mind, but what if she wasn't alone? What if she wasn't even there? He checked his phone. 5:45 p.m., 15 minutes to go. He spotted Marcus across the street, leaning against a lamppost, pretending to mess with his phone but clearly keeping an eye out. Jaden felt a wave of relief, but it was short-lived. Another text buzzed through. She's here. Don't trust her. His pulse raced as he scanned the crowd again. There she was, the woman from the bus, standing near the corner, her hands clasped tightly in front of her. She was wearing a dark coat now, her face half hidden by a scarf, but those eyes were unmistakable. She was looking right at him. Jaden's breath hitched. She hadn't moved, but her gaze was locked on him, intense and unyielding. He took a step forward, then stopped. The texts, the note, the warnings, they swirled in his head, pulling him in every direction. Was she the one he'd been looking for, like the note said? Or was she the danger the texts were warning about? Across the street, Marcus caught his eye, raising an eyebrow like, "You good?" Jaden gave a slight nod, but he wasn't sure if he was. The woman took a step toward him, her hand reaching into her pocket. Was she pulling out another note? Something else? Jaden's heart pounded as the crowd seemed to close in around him, the noise of the street fading into a dull roar. Time was running out. He had to decide, approach her or walk away. But before he could move, a hand grabbed his arm, yanking him back. "Jaden, don't," a voice hissed. He spun around, his eyes wide, but the face staring back at him wasn't Marcus. It was someone he'd never seen before, a man with sharp eyes and a grip like iron. "You don't know what you're walking into," the man said, his voice low and urgent. Jaden's blood ran cold as the woman on the corner started walking toward them, her expression unreadable. Jaden's heart slammed against his ribs as the man's grip tightened on his arm, his sharp eyes boring into him like they could see right through to his soul. "You don't know what you're walking into," the man repeated, his voice low and rough, like he was used to giving orders. Jaden yanked his arm free, stumbling back a step, his eyes darting between the stranger and the woman across the street. She was still coming toward them, her scarf slipping slightly to reveal a tense, almost desperate expression. The crowd at 63rd and Halstead buzzed around them, oblivious to the storm brewing in Jaden's world. He glanced at Marcus, who was now pushing through the crowd, his face a mix of confusion and concern. "Who are you?" Jaden demanded, his voice shaky but firm. The man didn't answer, just tilted his head toward the woman, who was now only a few yards away. "She's not who you think," he said, his words dripping with warning. Before Jaden could process what that meant, the man slipped something into his hand, a small, cold object that felt like a key. "Keep this safe," the man whispered, then melted into the crowd like a ghost. Jaden's head spun as he opened his palm. It was a key, small and brass, with a tiny number etched into it. 214. His mind raced. A key? To what? A locker? A door? And who was this guy? He stuffed the key into his pocket, his fingers brushing against the note from the woman. The weight of both, the note and the key, felt like they were pulling him deeper into a puzzle he wasn't sure he wanted to solve. The woman, was almost to him now, her steps quick and deliberate. Her eyes flicked to where the man had been, and for a split second, Jaden saw something new in her face. Fear. Not the tired gratitude from the bus, not the mysterious intensity from moments ago, but raw, unguarded fear. "Jaden," she said, her voice soft but urgent, like she was afraid someone might overhear. "We don't have much time. You need to come with me. Now." Her words hit him like a shockwave. How did she know his name? He hadn't told her anything on the bus. His pulse pounded in his ears as he took a step back, his instincts screaming at him to run. Across the street, Marcus was closing in, his eyes locked on the woman like he was ready to tackle her if she made a wrong move. Jaden caught his friend's gaze and shook his head slightly, a silent plea to hold back. He didn't know what was going on, but he needed answers, and running wasn't going to get them. "Who are you?" Jaden asked, his voice louder now, drawing a few curious glances from passers-by. The woman, glanced around nervously, her hands twisting together. "I can't explain here," she said. "It's not safe. Please just trust me." Trust her? After the texts warning him not to? After some random guy just handed him a key and vanished? Jaden's mind was a tangle of doubt and curiosity. He thought about his mom, working another late shift, and the promise he'd made to make things better for her. What if this woman was the key to that? But what if she was the danger the texts were talking about? Before he could decide, a loud honk cut through the noise of the street. A black SUV screeched to a stop at the corner, its tinted windows gleaming under the streetlights. The driver's door opened, and another man stepped out, tall, broad-shouldered, with a face like stone. He didn't look at Jaden or the woman. He just stood there, scanning the crowd like he was waiting for something. Or someone. Jaden's stomach dropped. Was this guy with her? With the man who gave him the key? Or was he someone else entirely? The woman grabbed Jaden's wrist, her grip surprisingly strong. "We have to go," she hissed, pulling him toward the alley behind the chicken joint. Jaden resisted, yanking his arm back. "I'm not going anywhere until you tell me what's happening," he said, his voice rising. Her eyes widened, and she glanced at the SUV, her fear now impossible to miss. "They're coming for it," she whispered.
The key.
"They know you have it." Jaden's blood ran cold. The key? How did she know about the key? He hadn't shown it to her, hadn't even mentioned it. His hand instinctively went to his pocket, feeling the cold metal against his fingers. The texts, the note, the key, the man, the SUV, it was all too much, piling up like a wave about to crash over him. He looked at Marcus, who was now just a few feet away, his fists clenched like he was ready for a fight. "Jay, what's going on?" Marcus called out, his voice cutting through the chaos. Jaden didn't know how to answer. He didn't even know where to start. The woman's grip tightened again, her voice trembling. "Please, Jaden. You don't understand what's at stake. If they get that key, it's over. For you, for me, for everyone." Her words sent a chill down his spine. Everyone? What was she talking about? A scholarship or a job didn't sound like this. This sounded bigger, scarier, like something out of a movie he had no business being in. The man from the SUV started walking toward them, his steps slow and deliberate, like a predator closing in. Jaden's heart was racing so fast he thought it might burst. He looked at the woman, her eyes pleading, then at Marcus, who was ready to jump in without a second thought. The texts replayed in his mind. "You're being watched. Don't trust her." But what if the texts were the lie? What if the woman was telling the truth? And what did the key unlock? Something that could change his life, or something that could end it? He felt the crowd pressing in, the noise of the street fading into a dull roar. The woman tugged at his arm again, her voice barely a whisper.
"Run, Jaden. Now."
But before he could move, the man from the SUV raised a hand, and two more figures stepped out of the vehicle, their faces hidden in the shadows. Jaden's breath caught as he realized he was surrounded, caught in a web he didn't understand, with no way out. Jaden's heart pounded like a drum as the two figures from the SUV stepped closer, their faces still cloaked in shadow. The woman, clung to his arm, her voice a desperate whisper. "Run, Jaden. Now." But his feet felt glued to the pavement, the weight of the key in his pocket anchoring him to the chaos unfolding at 63rd and Halstead. The crowd seemed to blur, the honking cars and chatter fading into a dull hum as his eyes darted between the woman, the approaching men, and Marcus, who was now pushing through the crowd, his face set with determination. Jaden's mind screamed at him to move, to do something, but the pieces of this puzzle, the note, the key, the texts, the warnings, were still a jumbled mess. He didn't know who to trust, but he knew he was out of time. The man from the SUV was only a few steps away, his stone-cold expression sending a shiver down Jaden's spine. "Give me the key," the man said, his voice low and commanding, like he was used to getting what he wanted. Jaden's hand tightened around the key in his pocket, his pulse racing. He wasn't handing it over, not until he knew what was going on. "Jaden, don't," the woman hissed, pulling him toward the alley again. Her eyes were wide with panic, but there was something else there too, something that looked like guilt. Marcus reached them just then, grabbing Jaden's other arm. "Yo, Jay, we gotta bounce." "This don't look right," he said, his voice tense. Jaden looked between them, pleading with him to follow her, and Marcus, ready to drag him out of there. The two men from the SUV were closing in, their steps deliberate, cutting through the crowd like sharks. Jaden's chest tightened. He had to make a choice. "Who are you?" he demanded, turning to the woman. "And why do you know my name?" Her face softened, but before she could answer, the man from the SUV lunged forward, reaching for Jaden's pocket. Instinct kicked in. Jaden yanked free from both and Marcus, dodging into the alley behind the chicken joint, his sneakers pounding against the cracked pavement. The alley was narrow, lined with overflowing dumpsters and graffiti-covered walls. Jaden's breath came in short gasps as he ran, the key digging into his palm. He could hear footsteps behind him, fast, heavy, more than one pair. He glanced back and saw the two men from the SUV, their faces now clear under the dim streetlights. They were older, maybe in their 40s, with hard, unyielding expressions. The woman was there too, running after them, shouting, "Jaden, wait." Marcus was right behind her, his voice cutting through the chaos. "Jay, hold up." Jaden's mind was a whirlwind. Why was everyone after him? What was so important about this key? He turned a corner, nearly tripping over a pile of trash, and spotted a rusted fire escape ladder at the end of the alley. Without thinking, he sprinted toward it, leaping to grab the lowest rung. His hand slipped, but he hauled himself up, climbing as fast as he could to the rooftop. The city stretched out below him, a maze of lights and noise. Jaden crouched behind an air vent, his chest heaving as he tried to catch his breath. He pulled the key from his pocket, turning it over in his hand. Number 214. It looked ordinary, but it was clearly anything but. He could hear voices below, the men, the woman, Marcus, all shouting, their words jumbled in the wind. His phone buzzed in his pocket, and he pulled it out, his hand shaking. Another text from the unknown number. "Look in the box. You'll understand." Jaden's stomach dropped. Box? What box? He scanned a rooftop, his eyes landing on a small, weathered metal box tucked against the ledge, half hidden by shadows. It looked old, rusted, like it had been there for years. His heart raced as he crawled toward it, the key trembling in his hand. Was this what the woman wanted? What the men were after? He slid the key into the lock, and with a soft click, it turned. Inside the box was a folded letter, a stack of cash, and a small, worn photo. Jaden's hands shook as he opened the letter, his eyes scanning the words. It was addressed to him, Jaden Carter. His breath caught. The letter was from his father, a man he hadn't seen since he was 5, a man his mom said had left them for good. If you're reading this, I'm gone, it began. But I never stopped watching over you. The key unlocks your future. A trust fund. A chance to change everything. Keep it safe. They'll come for it. Jaden's head spun. A trust fund? His father? He grabbed the photo, his hands trembling. It was him as a toddler, sitting on his dad's shoulders, both of them smiling. His mom had never shown him this.
Why?
He heard footsteps on the fire escape and shoved the letter and photo into his pocket, his mind reeling. The cash, thousands, maybe more, was real, but so was the danger. The woman reached the rooftop first, her face pale and frantic. "Jaden, you found it," she said, her voice breaking. "I'm Emily, your father's sister. I've been trying to find you for years." Jaden's jaw dropped. His aunt? He didn't even know he had an aunt. Before he could speak, the two men appeared, their eyes locked on the box. "Hand it over, kid," the taller one growled. Marcus climbed up behind them, out of breath but ready to jump in. "Jay, what's going on?" he shouted. Emily stepped in front of Jaden, her voice fierce. "They work for the people who stole your father's money. They'll kill for that key." Jaden's heart stopped. His father's money? Was that what this was about? He gripped the box, his mind racing. The men moved closer, one pulling a knife from his belt. Jaden backed toward the ledge, the city sprawling below him. He had the key, the letter, the truth, but he was trapped. Just then, a loud crack split the air. The men froze, and Jaden's eyes darted to the alley below. Pat stood there, holding a broom like a weapon, her voice booming. "You leave that boy alone." Behind her, Mr. Carter from the corner store was on the phone, yelling about calling the cops. The men hesitated, then bolted, disappearing down the fire escape. Emily grabbed Jaden's arm, tears in her eyes. "We need to get you somewhere safe," she said. "There's more you need to know." Jaden nodded, his head still spinning, but as they climbed down, he noticed Marcus staring at the box, his expression unreadable. "You good, man?" Jaden asked. Marcus nodded, but there was a flicker of something in his eyes, something that made Jaden's stomach twist. As they reached the street, Emily whispering about a safe house, Jaden realized the final twist. The last text hadn't come from Emily or the men. It had come from Marcus's phone. Jaden's mind was a whirlwind as he stood on the street, the metal box still clutched in his hands, the weight of the key and the letter burning in his pocket. Emily, his aunt, a woman he'd never known existed, stood beside him, her eyes scanning the alley for any sign of the men who'd chased them. Pat was still gripping her broom like a warrior, her face fierce despite her age, while Mr. Carter waved his phone, shouting about the cops being on their way. The chaos of 63rd and Halstead buzzed around them, the neon signs flickering, the crowd moving like nothing had happened. But for Jaden, everything had changed. His father, gone for over a decade, had left him a trust fund, a lifeline, a chance to change his life. Emily had been searching for him to deliver it. The men wanted to steal it. And Marcus, his best friend, the one person he'd trusted through all of this, had sent those cryptic texts. "You're being watched. Don't trust her." The words echoed in Jaden's head as he looked at Marcus, who was standing a few feet away, his hands stuffed in his pockets, his eyes avoiding Jaden's. The betrayal stung deeper than anything else. "Jaden, we need to move," Emily said, her voice low but urgent. She glanced at the box, then at the street, where the sound of sirens was starting to creep through the noise. "Those guys won't give up. They've been after your father's money for years." Jaden's grip on the box tightened. He wanted to believe her, but Marcus's texts had planted a seed of doubt. He turned to his friend, his voice shaking. "Marcus, why'd you send those texts? What's going on, man?" Marcus's jaw clenched, and for a moment, he didn't say anything. The silence was deafening. Finally, he looked up, his eyes filled with something Jaden couldn't quite read, guilt, maybe, or fear. "I was trying to protect you, Jay," Marcus said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I heard some stuff about her, about that key. I didn't know who to trust." Jaden's heart sank. Protect him? By scaring him half to death? He wanted to be angry, but the look on Marcus's face stopped him. His friend wasn't lying, not completely. Pat stepped forward, her broom still in hand. "Y'all better start talking, 'cause I ain't letting nobody mess with my boy," she said, her eyes flicking between Emily and Marcus. Mr. Carter nodded, his phone still out. "Cops'll be here any minute. You got something to say it now." Emily took a deep breath, her hands trembling as she pushed her scarf back. "Jaden, I swear I'm telling you the truth. Your father, my brother, set up that trust fund for you before he disappeared. He worked for a company that got mixed up with some bad people. They wanted the money he'd saved for you. He hid it, locked it away with that key, and asked me to find you if anything happened to him. I've been trying for years, but those men, they've been watching me, too." She paused, her eyes filling with tears. "I saw you on the bus yesterday. You looked so much like him. When you gave me your seat, I knew it was you. I had to take the chance." Jaden's throat tightened. He pulled a photo from his pocket, the one of him and his dad, and stared at it. The man in the picture was a stranger, but the smile was real. He'd always thought his dad had abandoned them, that he'd walked away without a care. But this letter, this trust fund, it told a different story. He looked at Emily, searching her face for any sign of a lie. She didn't flinch, her eyes steady despite the tears. "Why didn't he tell us?" Jaden asked, his voice cracking. "Why didn't he tell my mom?" Emily's face softened. "He wanted to protect you both. He thought if no one knew, you'd be safe. But he was wrong. Those men found out about the money anyway." Jaden's head was spinning. His dad hadn't left because he didn't care. He'd left to keep them safe. The realization hit him like a punch, and he felt tears prick his eyes. Marcus stepped closer, his voice hesitant. "Jay, I didn't know all that.
I swear.
I overheard some guys at the court talking about a key, saying it was worth a lot of money. They mentioned your name. I got scared, man. I didn't want you getting hurt." Jaden looked at his friend, the hurt and anger warring inside him. Marcus had gone behind his back, but he'd done it out of loyalty. It wasn't right, but it wasn't betrayal either. "You should have told me," Jaden said, his voice low. Marcus nodded, his shoulders slumping. "I know. I messed up. I couldn't lose you, man." The words hung between them, heavy with years of friendship. Jaden wanted to stay mad, but he couldn't. Not when Marcus had been ready to jump into a fight for him. The sirens were louder now, and red and blue lights flashed at the end of the street. Emily grabbed Jaden's arm. "We need to get to a lawyer. The trust fund is yours, but those men won't stop unless we secure it legally." Jaden nodded, his mind still reeling. He looked at Pat, who gave him a small, encouraging nod. "Go on, Jay. You got this," she said, her voice soft but firm. Mr. Carter clapped a hand on his shoulder. "You're a good kid, Jaden. Whatever this is, you'll figure it out." The support from the people who'd known him forever grounded him, like a tether in a storm. He turned to Emily. "Okay, let's go. But you're telling me everything, every detail." She nodded, relief flooding her face. "I will. I promise." They moved quickly, slipping through the crowd as the police cars pulled up. Jaden's heart was still racing, but for the first time, he felt a spark of hope. The trust fund, his dad's final gift, could change everything. It could pay for college, get his mom out of that second job, maybe even move them to a better neighborhood. But as they ducked into a cab, Emily flagged down. Jaden's phone buzzed again. He froze, expecting another cryptic text, but it was his mom. "Baby, you okay? Heard there was trouble near 63rd. His heart warmed at her worry, and he texted back, "I'm good, Ma. I'll explain later." He'd tell her everything soon, but not yet. Not until the money was safe. The cab ride was quiet, the city blurring past as Emily explained the next steps. The key opened a safe deposit box at a bank downtown, where the trust fund documents were stored. A lawyer her brother had trusted was waiting to help them claim it. But the men who'd chased them worked for a shady investor who'd been after the money for years. "They won't stop," Emily warned. "But once we file the papers, the money's yours legally. They'll have no claim." Jaden listened, clutching the box, the letter, and the photo. He thought about his dad, a man he barely remembered, who'd loved him enough to leave him a future. It wasn't just money, it was a legacy, a second chance. When they reached the lawyer's office, a small, cluttered space above a deli, the man behind the desk stood to greet them. He was older, with kind eyes and a stack of papers ready. "You must be Jaden," he said, shaking his hand. "Your father would be proud." The words hit Jaden hard, and he felt tears well up again. They spent the next hour signing documents, Emily filling in the gaps about his dad's life. A brilliant accountant who'd gotten tangled with the wrong people, who'd hidden the money to protect his family. By the time they left, the trust fund was secure, and Jaden felt like he could finally breathe. Back home, Jaden sat his mom down and told her everything: the note, the key, the chase, Emily, the trust fund. Her eyes widened, then filled with tears as she read the letter from her husband. "He loved you so much," she whispered, hugging Jaden tight. The money, enough for college, a new apartment, and more, meant they could start over. Marcus came by later, apologizing again, and Jaden forgave him. They'd been through too much to let this break them. As Jaden lay in bed that night, the photo of him and his dad on his nightstand, he thought about the journey that started with a simple act of kindness on a bus. One moment, one choice, had unlocked a future he'd never imagined. The men were gone, the money was safe, but the real gift was knowing his dad had never stopped caring. And yet, as he drifted asleep, a final thought lingered. Marcus's texts had mentioned hearing some guys at the court, but he'd never said who. A tiny seed of doubt remained, but for now, Jaden let it go, holding tight to the hope that had carried him through.